Hello everybody and welcome back to another match analysis episode, and today I'm going to be breaking down the Random Opera's Myoko match. The Random Opera is a player who has been on the North American World of Warships forums asking people for advice, like how do you actually get better, and this was one of the replays, actually the most recent replay that the Random Opera posted. What I'm going to do is sort of break the battle down to its individual little pieces and point out where things went right and where things went wrong. So let's start at the very beginning of this battle. The first thing you do in any World of Warships battle is to take a quick look at the enemy team and look at your own team and figure out where your strengths are and where the enemy strengths are. So if you look at these two teams, the enemy team has an additional battleship. They have an New Mexico that the Random Opera's team does not have, which means they're going to have a battleship advantage. The enemy team is about even on cruisers. They have a Myoko as well. They have York. And so in terms of cruisers, it's reasonably even. The one advantage that the Random Opera's team has is in destroyers. They have a Kiev, and the enemy team only has tier 5 destroyers. The next thing you have to do is to take a look at where the enemy ships are going, and then to figure out that, your team's strength versus the enemy team's strength, and see how you can mitigate their strengths and maximize your strength. So in this case, in the event that all the enemy battleships get together, then as a cruiser, and especially because your team is weaker on battleships, you might want to try to avoid that fight. Find other places where there's no enemy battleships, preferably cruisers, and try to push through there. Taking a look at the mini-map, what we very quickly see is that for the enemy battleships, all 4 of them pop up on the mini-map on these sort of 8 and 9 lines, which means that all their battleships are grouping together to form one battleship force, which also means that on the other areas of the map, the 3, 4, 5 lines, no battleships. So in this case, the Random Opera does the right thing. Heads towards the 4 line where there's no battleships, where the Myoko, because it's a top tier heavy cruiser, should be able to take care of everything on the enemy team. What this battle is going to end up being is a battle between superior firepower and superior mobility. The Random Opera's team has superior mobility, while the other team has the battleships offering superior firepower. The key thing to keep in mind in this particular situation is that the enemy battleships, if they get out of position, they've just committed the biggest mistake, because it is going to open up a lot of space, which the Random Opera's team with the superior mobility should be able to exploit, get onto the enemy team's cap, and then basically win the battle in that kind of manner by capping out. And this is mostly because the enemy battleships, if they get caught out of position, cannot go back quickly enough. Take a look at what they have. There is a Colorado, a New Mexico, and a New York. 3 slow US battleships. If they get out of position, there's no way they can get back anywhere. A lot of times, if they've committed to going in a certain way, they've sort of made that decision to go there. The only enemy battleship that can go back quickly enough is the Congo. But if your entire team gets to the cap, steps on it with your superior mobility, that one Congo coming back cannot prevent the cap from happening, because there's just too many ships there to deal with. So, alright, so at this particular point in time, if you take a look at what's happening, the Random Opera actually does the right thing. Has gone with the majority of his team, minus a couple of ships that have decided to go on the I line to contest the enemy team's push, and they've gone up the 3-4 lines, and this is the right decision. This is the right thing to do, because you cannot go and fight against the entire enemy group that's coming down the 9 line. However, the enemy team actually at this particular moment has already made a big mistake. They're going to continue to go south, and they're going to get themselves into that corner of the map, around where I-9, I-10, J-9, J-10 is. They're going to get into that corner, and then they're going to have to travel all the way across to get onto cap. While for the Random Opera, going up the 3 line, there's a very direct route to the enemy team's cap. So, enemy team right now is actually doing the wrong thing. The Random Opera's team, so far, doing the right thing. However, there is something that I have to point out to you, which is the Random Opera, you really have to make sure that when you're playing a cruiser, that you have the right ammunition selected and you use the right kinds of ammunition. So, for example, in the previous engagement with the Omaha, yes, you had an HE salvo loaded, and yes, you can fire that one HE salvo. But as soon as you fired it, and the Omaha was giving you a broadside, that first switch of ammo type needed to happen right there. You needed to go from HE to AP right away. Still, it's still a rather small problem that you had. The bigger problem actually sort of happens around here. The enemy destroyer pops up, manages to do a very, very good job, and takes out the Congo on your team with a very nicely placed torpedo. You do manage to kill the destroyer. Stop right here. Take a look at your mini-map. See what's happening. You have a very low HP enemy Kirov, who's heading behind the island on the 2 line. The absolute majority of the enemy team, including all of their battleships and some of their cruisers, are on the 9-10 line heading for that corner. Right here is where you needed to be heading towards Cap. Now, I'm not sure if at this particular point you were reading chat and somebody said, you know, Cap with a not so nice name. I'm not sure if you were distracted at that time and, you know, your attention wasn't focused on it. But this was the time to actually go for Cap, because had you gone for Cap, the enemy team would have had to make a decision. Either send some ships back, try to take you down, or continue on to your Cap. Their battleships push really, really slowly, in which case the first ships that are likely to come back would be cruisers. And as a top tier Japanese cruiser, against another cruiser, I would take my chances there pretty much any day of the week. And you know, but instead what you do is you decide to sort of chase the really, really injured Kirov, and then go after the really injured destroyer. And you sort of spend a lot of time doing something against a group of enemies that really aren't going to have much combat effectiveness. When you're way off on the 1 line, on the 9 line, the 10 line, the overall combat effectiveness of the group of ships is not all that high. So you do take care of the Kirov, and the Minakaze dies. Alright, so still things are not terrible. I mean, yes, you're not in the greatest position right now, but things are not terrible. The Kirov, the Myoko, and the remaining destroyer within range of you, the iChaseGaming, are all reasonably fast ships, and right now the way to the enemy Cap is uncontested. There's nothing there stopping you from just going straight to their Cap. While the enemy team that went the really long way down the 9 line onto the I and J lines, they're still running into resistance from your team. There's still a battleship and a cruiser and a destroyer there. The enemy team, even if they push really, really hard right now, still cannot get onto your Cap uncontested. You can get onto theirs, and there's no ship stopping you. The closest ship that can get back to do anything is a destroyer, and if you look on the map, the destroyer is all the way on the I line. In fact, right now, there's even somebody on your team who's telling you, stop chasing that DD and Cap, offering you valid advice, and very valuable advice, and had you taken it, would have probably helped your team win, because if you had gotten onto Cap, the Kirov had gotten onto Cap, and the destroyer, even if one of you get destroyed, there's 2 ships on Cap, and you're going to Cap a lot faster. And the enemy team really don't have ships that can get back all that quickly, most likely securing your team a win, where if you take a look at the overall ships remaining, the enemy team now has the advantage. They have actually all their battleships, and your team is down to 1. So right here is the decision to be made that would have determined win or loss. Instead, what I think the Random Opera does is he gets into a chat war with somebody else in chat. Somebody said something that wasn't very nice, and I agree with that. It's not a very nice thing to say. But the Random Opera feels the need to get onto chat and start replying to things. Don't respond. That's my advice. Don't respond to things that you don't want to listen to. Just ignore it. Focus on what you have to do in the battle, because that is going to allow you to win the battle and shut the people up who are telling you you're doing the wrong thing. Instead, you get it into with somebody on the chat, and you're no longer focusing on what you have to do as a cruiser. And you make the decision also to go back to Cap, your own Cap, which is a really, really bad idea. There was one last warning, by the way. Right here, somebody says, in not so nice language, why are you coming back? In which case, if if you kept calm a little bit and you thought about it, yes, the person didn't say very nicely, but do they still have a point? Absolutely. Why are you going back? Take a look at what's in front of you on the enemy team. 4 of the enemy battleships are still there. 3 of them are still practically at full HP. The Congo is about just under half. They have a near full HP Myoko. They have, a destroyer that's nowhere to be seen anymore because, by the way, that destroyer on the enemy team, very, very good play. Notice that their entire north was gone and that you and the Kirov and the iChaseGaming were there and realized that you guys could go for cap and win the battle. And that destroyer on the enemy team made a very good play, immediately headed north, hit the speed boost and headed north. And had you been there with your destroyer, when that enemy destroyer got there, you would have been able to protect your own destroyer because, remember, you had an iChaseGaming, which against a gunboat is not going to fare well. But instead, you go back to cap where you're not going to be able to do anything. The enemy team has superior firepower, superior HP pools, and you're just not going to be able to kill things on the enemy team fast enough. And by this point, the minute you guys decide to go back, this game was basically over. And of course, there was the additional poor luck where your destroyer got detonated by the enemy destroyer, having absolutely no chance really to defend himself. And that's it. The battle is over. There is nothing more that the 3 of you are going to do to prevent the enemy team from winning. They are going to overwhelm you with their battleships, their firepower, and the battle is lost. The things that you did right in this battle, you went the right way at the beginning, avoided the enemy battleships, which was the right thing, pushed up the weaker flank on the enemy team, used your superior mobility to get into a good position. Those were all the good things about this battle. Bad things, first up, ignoring good advice when somebody actually said stop chasing the destroyer, go and cap, ignoring that piece of advice, because had you gone for cap, it would have completely turned this battle the other way around. Second thing is then going back to your own cap, because I still cannot figure out what made you decide that this was a good decision to bring a cruiser face to face against 4 battleships as well as enemy cruisers. This was just a terrible decision, and the worst thing of all, even worse than the bad plays that were made, was deciding to get into arguments in chat with your own team. Once you decided to do that, you completely lose sight of the battle. You're no longer focusing and thinking about what is happening with the enemy team, with your team, and how you can best win a battle. Remember, here's the thing. You're always going to run into some people who are going to hate, or going to, troll, whatever, in chat. You're always going to have those kinds of people. Best thing you can do is ignore them if they're actively saying something that's really, really terrible, or if they're saying something, even if not in the best tone, but they have a valid point, think about it. Right? Keep a level head, think about it. Do they have actually a valid point? If they do, fantastic, great, then you can do something about it. But just remember this one last thing, is that at the end of the day, if you help your team win the battle, it doesn't matter what anybody says, you won the battle, and the rest of your team are going to know that you won them that battle, and everything that person said doesn't mean anything at all. And that does it for this match analysis episode. Of course, if you guys picked up something else that I didn't really talk about, and you do want the Random Opera to know about it, do make sure you leave him a comment in the comment section below so he can take a look at it and maybe pick out some other things as well. Other than that, I wish you all have a very, very good weekend, and I'm looking forward to talking to all of you again soon.